All right, guys and girls, right here at the top, I want to let you know that in just literally 2 minutes or less, I'm going to be playing on today's episode of Talking Buffalo, a sit-down interview that I did live from Imperial Pizza over the weekend with two of my favorite sports media people in the business, former Buffalo Bills Pro Bowler Eric Wood and WGR Buffalo Bills beat reporter Sal Capaccio. Sat down on Imperial, had a great conversation, lots of fun and revealing topics. We talked about sports media. We talked about a Buffalo Bills broadcast, how it was put together, the prep behind it, just kind of growing up as people, injuries, parenting, all kinds of stuff with Eric and Sal. Really good conversation. I enjoyed it immensely. But I want to let you know, and that's why I'm here at the top, that all the stuff we talked about, one thing we didn't was the Buffalo Bills game on Sunday night, a horrifically narrow victory over the New York Giants that, quite frankly, the Bills did not deserve to win. But you're not going to hear about that game on today's show. Much more upbeat. Like I said, a fun conversation with Sal and Eric. But I'll tell you this right now, going forward, starting on Tuesday's show, probably for a good majority of the week, we're going to talk about this game and this Buffalo Bills team a lot because they may have won the game. And I get it. A win is a win. But there's a lot to be concerned about when it comes to the Buffalo Bills. I'm not happy, and I'm doing this literally 5-10 minutes or so after that game just ended. I'm sure a lot of you, if you're being objective about it, you're not happy as well. So there'll be plenty to talk about and to digest throughout the week here. But for today, on today's episode of Talking Buffalo, a much more light and fun conversation, like I said, with two of the best around, Eric Wood and Sal Capaccio. On that note, let's get to the episode. Enjoy it. All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to a special episode of Talking Buffalo, part of the Blue Wire Network. I am here, well, we're recording this anyway, live from Imperial Pizza in South Buffalo, and I am joined by two very special guests today. To my immediate left, my day one guy, man, the very first guest on my first podcast that I ever had. Been doing this with me all along. Sal Capaccio, who is on the injury report. Gotta put this out there. His voice is not great, so you're on a pitch count, kind of like Von Miller in London.
Eric says the only guy who loses his voice more than him is me.
Right. Yeah, I lose my voice very easily. You put us on a Nashville game where we both are likely going to be singing a good amount throughout the weekend. We're both going to be on IR by the time the game starts.
No doubt.
And if you're listening and not watching on video, I am also joined by one of my former favorite players, but now I got to start getting more used to calling you one of my favorite media people in the broadcast booth, Eric Wood. What's going on, Eric? How you doing?
I'm doing great. Pat, always enjoy everything you put out. I think I initially got tuned into your work with the Buffalo Wing rankings and was following along with that. And then it was the episodes of The Office, and it wasn't necessarily the Buffalo sports. Not that I'm turned off by that by any means, but what drew me to you was kind of the off the beaten path content you're putting out.
I really do appreciate that. And speaking of wings, we put away a lot of wings here at Imperial before we got going with this show. Good wings, man. These are solid wings. That's what I like to call this place. It's a solid, consistent place. It's not like, everyone talks about 9/11 and all, and Barville and all these elite places, and they are elite. This place is just really solid and really consistent.
Yeah, but those places are very hard to get into.
Sure.
It's an occasion. You can come to Imperial with your family and get a table and have great wings and great pizza.
Sure.
And so, to me, you don't have wings on the menu in Buffalo and survive if they're not good. And by good, I mean good by Buffalo standards, great by national standards.
Yeah.
And so I love Imperial.
I think the other thing is, too, how many people really think about like a South Buffalo pizzeria as a place that has all these great wings. And it's called Imperial Pizza, right? But it is. It's a spot you can go, and the wings are consistent, and they're good, and they're big. I'm big on give me fat wings, right? And that's what it is.
Yeah, this place is a staple in South Buffalo. Like this place, Doc Sullivan's, these are like the two staples here in South Buffalo. But anyway, it's great to have both of you here. Not really going to talk much Buffalo Bills. We're taping this, by the way, really late on a Saturday night. Going to drop this early in the week. So the Bills-Giants game already will have been played. So we're not really going to talk about that. I kind of want to talk about some broadcasting and media stuff with both you guys, whether it's doing the game together, on the radio, your own projects as well. I want to start with you too, Eric. And by the way, I'm going to try to save Sal's voice
because we got to call the game tomorrow.
As much as I can. You got a lot of work to do tomorrow. Eric, so I first had you on, and you were retired, freshly kind of retired. You hadn't even started your job with the Bills in the booth yet. And I remember talking to you even at that time because you were used to the media because you were on the radio during your career every week, and you kind of had a good idea of how the media works. You know what I mean? And I always thought you were one of those players who really worked well alongside the media. But talk about like your transition into the booth from say 2019 until now, and you could hear it every time you tune into the broadcast, just the comfort level doing these games, like that process of getting comfortable doing it.
Well, you said work alongside with the media, and I think that's really well said. And a lot of players don't approach it like that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't understand how much of public opinion is skewed, especially by the local media. And so, I mean, my foundation can speak for this now that even I'm done playing, and year after year we have record-breaking numbers because of the public opinion that was formed on me by media members in this market. And if you're not willing to work with them, especially when you're playing in the longest playoff drought in all of pro sports, then you're not doing your job. You're not respecting the position you're in, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
Because you are wearing the Buffalo Bills emblem. You have the NFL shield on your uniform. That's a privilege to play for the Bills. And if you're not respecting that, you're not respecting those that cover you on a day-to-day basis, that's their job as well. And you're not working with them. I love how you said that. Then you're not doing it correctly. But 2019, I come on with the Bills. I had just signed a deal with ESPN and ACC Network to call games with them, and then got offered the Bills gig. And all I could think of in my mind when I got offered the Bills gig was, if I turn this down, it might be 30-something years. So I grew up in Cincinnati. I'm really good friends with him now. But Dave Lapham is still calling games. Yeah. I'm 37 years old. He was calling games when I was 5 years old. And I've gotten to know him, and I absolutely love Dave Lapham. But all I could think was, if someone takes this job, it's not like, hey, let me go work at ESPN for 2 years and come back. No, they can have it for the next 30 years. And so for me, I said, okay, well, I have to take that one. I've already signed a deal with ESPN. I'll do them both for 2 years, figure out which one I like more. And obviously now I'm still doing the Bills game, and I like this a lot more.
Let me ask you, like, your comfort level doing it now compared to then. Like, say you go back and you think a couple years ago, just to process your process and how much more comfortable you are now. And then after, I also want Sal to chime in too, because you've been alongside seeing Eric grow, as a broadcaster in the booth over these last handful of years.
So it's so different calling a game on the radio, because I feel like my strength as a broadcaster and even as a player was the schemes, the X's and O's, understanding what's coming. Well, that doesn't translate to radio. Now, we have so many people that tune into the broadcast that are also watching the game. And sometimes I'll mention that. Like, I know we have viewers that saw that as well, and I'll mention them.
Right.
But for the most part, you're calling a game on radio. You have to be respectful that people cannot see the game. Well, for me, like, I loved when I was with ESPN drawing on the screen and showing people, like, this is why this happened. Especially you come out of a commercial break, like, this is what made this touchdown happen. And if you're paying attention right now, you're going to be smarter around your buddies the next time, because you can say this too. Yeah. Well, you can do none of that on radio. So it's much more, hey, it's 3rd and 7. Well, I'm not showing like, hey, this might be a pressure they bring, or this is what they like to do. It's okay. The Bills are second in the league in third down offense. This Giants team struggles in all areas on defense. It's a different approach, but I feel like I've gotten a lot more comfortable with that.
I think that, watching Eric and being alongside of him, I think the biggest thing is, and this is a tough thing to understand when you're in radio, is the timing of when to get in and when to get out, because on TV, he can talk over the play, right? You can do that.
Right.
You can't do that in radio. And not that Eric's ever been bad at it, but I think he is very comfortable in understanding the flow of the game versus when you first came on and when those things have to happen. And it's also a transition going from Murph to Chris Brown, obviously.
Right.
No doubt about that. But I think that's, to me, what I've seen. Like, Eric is super comfortable knowing when he is supposed to talk, when he's supposed to stop talking for the next play to be ready, and because that's different in radio than it is from TV for sure.
It definitely is, and sometimes you just cut off your own thought. Yep. We'll get back to that. Yep. Like, I know it doesn't sound great at the time, but it's necessary for people to be keeping up with the flow of the game.
That's right.
Chris has to set up the play. He has to call the current play. If I have a great point to make, I can get right back to it. If it was a crappy point, I probably won't get back to it. But that's okay. You know, and the Bills go in and out of no huddle. Yeah. Well, we're talking about the Bills 90% of the time. So a lot of times when the Bills are on offense, we're talking about what they're doing. Well, then the Bills all of a sudden get to the line of scrimmage, and I'm talking about why Stefon Diggs got 5 yards of separation when he really shouldn't have, but he ran such a good route or whatever. Okay, well, that's null and void because the fans need to know what is happening in this moment.
And then the same thing can happen if I'm giving a scoreboard. Like I'm doing a scoreboard update. I'm literally watching when they come out of the huddle because if they're still in the huddle, I can give 2 more scores. Yeah. If they're not, I got to stop it and get it back to the booth because I want to give enough time for Chris to set up the next play to say what's happening. I can't be trampling on the snap, basically.
But those scoreboard updates are sponsored. We have to get those in.
That's right.
And there's been a difference since 2019 and even now with the amount of ad reads we have. I mean, it is a completely full, sold-out broadcast every time we're on mic, which is great. I mean, that helps GR, it helps the Bills, it helps our salary, it helps everybody. Yep. That's a great thing. But we've all had to get used to, okay, Sal has to say scores, even if there's no relevant scores. We're in London.
Oh my God.
So Sal, because we have to get score updates, well, no one else has played except for the Thursday night game. So say the Thursday night game, and here's who we have coming up.
I'm giving what's happening later in the day when we're done.
Yeah.
Because I got to read it because we have a sponsor.
Yeah.
Because they have to get it in.
I find it kind of funny, Eric. Kids who are young now, I mean, don't get me wrong, I've gotten to know you in the last handful of years as a member of the media, but I still think of you first and foremost as a football player who had a great career with the Buffalo Bills. It's kind of funny seeing some of these younger kids, though, and the older you get, and every year you're in the booth, and these kids are younger, they'll see Eric Wood, and they'll be like, oh, that's the radio guy. That's the guy who's on TV on One Bills Live talking about the Bills. Is that a little bit kind of weird for you to see kids like that saying, hey, he's the media guy?
Okay, so not only is that kids, that's also guys on the team.
Yeah, that's right.
There's like guys on the team that just know me as the media guy, know me as the radio guy. And luckily, I played for Sean. Brandon Bean gave me a contract. Aaron Cromer, my own offensive line coach, is back with the Bills. So that gives me some street cred when I walk into a team meal, which it's like, I don't know if we're like, I know I'm allowed to be there because I'm technically a Bills employee, but it's kind of like, it's really gray whether we're supposed to be in these meals. And I'm like, look, you could say anything you want. Like, none of this is getting reported. Sure. Like, I am just the radio guy.
I got to tell you a funny story. So on that, we're in Chicago for the last preseason game, and Ryan Vandermark was playing, I think, a lot in that game, right? And he played really well, and Eric was giving him a lot of praise. Well, I had to go get the starting lineups for everybody to announce, and I go to Ryan Vandermark, and I'm like, hey, Ryan, and I said, my name's Sal. He goes, yeah, I know you are. We started talking. I said, hey, you had a really good game last week. I said, Eric Wood was really giving you a lot of praise on the radio. And I go, do you know Eric? He goes, yeah, I think I've met him a couple of times. Like, I don't think he knew that you were the former center. Because I'm like, because for Eric to say how good he played meant something because he's our lineman, but I don't think he understood what I was trying to say to him.
Well, and I had just met his dad at Elio DePaulo's.
That's amazing.
Which, similar to what I was saying earlier, like if you're nice, you build a relationship with guys in the media, that helps. So I just met his dad, and he did play well. I wouldn't blow smoke, but because he played well and I just met his dad and loved him, well, now I'm going to really build him up, And I had talked to Aaron Cromer before the game.
That's right.
And Aaron was like, no, we really, really like Ryan Vandermark. We really like Alec Anderson. Like these are like not even like fringe players. They are like core backup offensive linemen, future guys that will contribute here. Okay, well, I'm going to talk up those guys on air. Right. And Aaron's fine with me saying that. And guys that have relationships like with Cromer, he can be completely honest with me. I would never say, well, Aaron Cromer thinks this guy stinks. Or Aaron said that he had a really rough week. It's only positives. Like, I want to talk up all the guys. Chad Hall, who's now with Jacksonville, saw him before the game last week. Chad used to always do that for me with the receivers. I would say, hey, tell me who's been playing well in practice of these young guys so I can sound really smart on air. And, you seem like this, it will build these guys up. It's the Isaiah Hodgins. It's those guys that are coming up through the preseason.
And then, but a guy like Ryan Vandermark, that I don't think he knew that Eric was who Eric was when he was here. He just knew that it was nice for him to say that. And I met him a couple times. And it was kind of funny.
Was it when you're in the booth, missing the game? You're always going to miss playing. I don't care. I'm sure you'll miss it if you're in the booth 20 years from now. You'll still miss playing. But those first, like maybe those 2 years, was it hard? Was it really hard? And has it gotten a little bit easier now, developing and accepting, this is my job, this is my career, this is my life now?
Yeah, I mean, I would honestly still be playing football if I could. I absolutely loved it. Cromer could tell you the same thing. Sean McDermott, Brandon Bean would all tell you the same thing. If I could still be playing football, I would.
Yeah.
It's just ingrained in me that I was going to play till the wheels completely fell off. So it was a blessing that my career likely ended when it did, because I could still be a functional human being. I always compare the game of football like a round of golf. You remember the highs and you crave those, and you think about those 2 really good shots you had, and they make you want to go back, and you forget about the off-season surgeries and sitting in the basement of my house for months at a time laid up while my wife's just struggling with a newborn, and you forget about all that.
Yeah.
But yes, I do miss it. Now people all the time will ask me pregame when we're on the field standing there and the guys are running out of the tunnel, like, do you miss it? I'm like, no, I don't think about it. I'm getting ready to do my job. And so I think it honestly helps that every time that the Bills are running out of the tunnel, I'm prepping to do my job, and I'm not thinking about, man, I wish I was in their shoes. I'm thinking about, hey, here's our intro. Here's our topics coming up. Here's what we got to get in today. Here's my new read I got to get in for the Good Feet store, whoever it is. That's what I'm thinking about.
You're honing your craft,
yeah,
just like you did as a player, but now you're doing it as a member of the media. This is a question for both of you. I think it would be interesting for fans out there who are listening or watching right now, kind of take fans inside a little bit of the process. Like tomorrow night, we're taping this Saturday night, so tomorrow night, whatever. Let's say a typical Sunday 1 p.m. game, okay? Because I'm wrong again, because we were talking about this over our wings here at Imperial. The Bills never play at 1 o'clock on Sunday anymore.
Right, yeah.
A typical 1 o'clock Sunday game.
Sure.
What is your preparation for the game? And you guys have 2 different roles, obviously, but like, how much prep work goes into the week before the game, and like what time you arrive at the stadium and what time you got to get set up? Like, what's your process like on a game day?
Well, you go first, because I want to hear yours. Honestly.
Well, the first thing is, throughout the week, I would say I'm different than Eric because I'm on the radio all week.
Sure. Yeah.
Like I'm actually doing radio shows all week, kind of talking about the team, talking about last week. I'm going to practice. I'm the beat reporter.
Right.
So I'm hearing all the sound. I'm getting Sean McDermott. I'm getting Josh Allen. So that in itself is preparation for me. I'm hearing everything they're saying about the opponent. I'm following the injury report every week. So that really helps itself. Once we get to the weekend, I have to do an article. I have to do a keys to the game. I'll do that. I'll start to think about that kind of thing. But my biggest thing is when I get to the game the next day, I usually get there, I would say 5 hours before the game. So 1 o'clock, I'm at 8 o'clock. Got to get there by 8 o'clock. I got to do a radio hit at 9 o'clock with Jeremy White and Nate Geary. And then I host 2 hours later the roundtable with Eric and Chris.
Yeah.
So my preparation is to make sure I have notes for the roundtable, what I want to talk about. It's generally Bills offense, Bills defense, but there's got to be storylines throughout the week I got to make sure I hit on. So I want to make sure I'm prepped for the roundtable with them to talk about what's going on during that particular hour. And then Chris Brown will give me 3 or 4 bullet points for the first time he throws it down to me pregame, say, this is what I want to talk about during pregame. So I have to be buttoned up on that. So pretty much that's my preparation. And then during the game, we can talk about that later, but it's just the game flow after that.
Yeah. So one of my biggest things coming into the booth, and especially doing the roundtable with Sal and Chris, because even before it was John, or before John had to step out for Chris, me, Chris, and Sal did the roundtable, and I refused to not be informed there. Like, I wanted to bring something to the table, whether it was a stat I found, whether it was a stat that the guy who edits my podcast, who helps me out with some stuff, whether it's something he found. Like, I wanted to bring something to the table where it's not like, hey, every time we want to talk about what a former player would think about, we'll ask Eric, and everything else, like, we'll handle this because I don't even think he's watching. this week, Matt Perino stumped Mitch Morse on a question, and finally in the press conference, he was like, actually, I don't even really know how to answer that. That was just a good question. I texted Matt in the moment, and Matt's like, I can't believe you listen to these things. I'm like, honestly, I'm waiting in a line at Disney World right now with my family, amazing. And I get a notification every time someone goes to the podium. And if at all possible I can, I tune in right then and pull out the notes section of my phone. Because during the broadcast, if something comes up, I don't want to be like, man, I cannot believe that this is happening right now. It's like, well, Sean brought that up on Thursday. So now you sound like a fool. Most of the people who listen to our broadcast are very informed Bills fans. I will make a fool of myself if I'm not completely engulfed in it. So people ask me, like, how many hours does it take to prep throughout the week? And I'm like, I don't know exactly, because I listen to a certain number of podcasts. Like when I'm working out in the morning, I stay in tune to it all day long with notifications on my phone. Anytime someone's going to the podium, any articles, I read anything Sal writes, so that, you know, if he brings something up or Chris brings something up that he wrote about during the week, so I'm informed about it. So nothing's catching me off guard on game day. And I care about the team. I love the team. So it's something I wouldn't do it to that extent, but I would still follow the team even if I wasn't in this role. And so it's kind of an all-encompassing thing. And then kind of my cheat code for the broadcast is I do pay to get a chart made where it's got so many stats and everything on it, and it's pretty awesome.
What time you guys get to the stadium? Now, in your case,
he said 8. I get there by 10. Now, last week there was a snafu, or the last Bills home game. Couldn't fly in, couldn't get into Buffalo because of fog, couldn't get into Niagara because of fog. Had to go to Rochester. There wasn't a car there for us.
Oh wow!
And we had to wait on a car. And
so I drive 20 minutes stadium, but he comes in from
Louisville.
Yeah. So it makes it.
And I always get there the night before.
Yes.
But we were coming with a family that offered to fly us up private. And I thought, what's the worst that happens? You know, we were going to get there so early that it wasn't even going to be an issue.
Right.
Except for I missed the round table for the first time ever. And I was about to have an anxiety attack.
That sounds like
I'm a people pleaser.
Yeah.
Look, I'm a people pleaser.
Yeah, I get
and
it.
So
I'd be the same.
And everyone was so unbelievably cool about it that it honestly, like, it showed me what everyone thinks about me. Like Sal and Chris are like, no worries, buddy, we got this. I'm like, well, thank you very much. And all my other bosses were like, dude, no worries. This never happened. This isn't something that happens weekly. But I was honestly, if they would have been like, well, you need to get here quick, you know, we have replacements, I would have been an anxious wreck.
You guys mentioned Chris Brown a couple times. Talk about the job he's doing right now, because that's filling in for somebody like Murph. That's not an easy task, and I think he's done a great job.
And I know what he thinks about Chris's prep. I'll let him talk about that. But for me, here's my philosophy. Here's what I was. When you are a guy taking over for John, I think you're probably apprehensive. Chris, I wanted to make things easier on Chris. I want to make sure Chris knows I'm a team player. I'm here for you. Like, I don't want to make things difficult on you. I want to make things as easy as possible. I love working with John, but this isn't like a against you and for John. This is, we're all a team here.
Right.
You're the substitute. You're filling in. You're the backup quarterback.
Yeah.
I got to be available. I got to be here. So anything I can do to make Chris's job easier from the get-go, I wanted him to know that. And I think that now he understands that, like, not that he didn't necessarily, but I think that our relationship has personally grown because I think Chris understands that I'm there to help him and not to wish John Murphy was there or something like that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Sure.
Yeah. And even though I can wish Murph unbelievable health and be back in the booth because I miss one of my best friends.
Right.
I also think Chris has grown tremendously.
Yes.
I think he's doing an incredible job. I think not for me, I would never give him any criticism because I think he started light years ahead of where I'm even at. But from constructive criticism he's taken it, he's ran with it.
Sure.
And I think he's done a great job. I'll tell you this. We were calling a preseason game this year at Pittsburgh, and a third-string DB for Pittsburgh made the play, and without looking down at the spotter pointing at the number, without looking down at his chart, he said his name. And I said, look, Chris, we hit a TV timeout, and I said, Chris, that's all I need to know about your preparation. That was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that guy was listed on my sheet. And I have a professional company that does all the ESPN guys. I got his number from Kirk Herbstreit. Like, he does all the game day guys. Like, he cannot mess up. And I don't even know if this guy was listed on my sheet or my chart. And Chris rattled his name, and I was crazy. Like, you are prepped, brother. That is impressive. And he said, look, anything I can control before the broadcast, I don't have the experience that some of us do, or especially Merv, but what I can control is knowing the names, prepping for the game. And so that's something I can control, not wishing I had 30 more years of experience like Merv.
His own preparation. That's right.
Live here from Imperial Pizza. I'm with Sal Capaccio and Eric Wood. You guys both have side projects now, your own shows. Eric, you've had yours for a while. I want to talk with you in a minute about that. Sal, you just, and I apologize. I said he's on a pitch count yet. I keep asking you questions and kill your voice
it's going okay.
A little bit more. But no, it's a project that I'm excited about. I watched the first one and I loved it. It's called Sal's House. And you've had, just one episode so far, but you had media people at your house and you're talking about topics, sort of what we're doing today in a sense. We're talking about your lives and your careers in media and stuff like that. But the unique part, the twist that I love the most is that you're literally doing it in your house. It's called Sal's House because it's literally in your house. What made you want to start that? Well, like, what was the idea behind doing that? And I really, you know me, I live for these kind of conversations. So I love it.
Well, first of all, I'll say the second half of that first episode is coming out.
Okay.
So we're two halves of that first episode. And then it's just going to grow. And it's here's I'm a conversational person like you. I love talking with people. I started a podcast a while back called Sal Sports and stuff. And it didn't launch to where I wanted it to, so I couldn't quite figure it out. But I've always wanted to do. I watch like I Am Athlete. You ever watch I Am Athlete or The Shop with LeBron James? And what I've always been intrigued by is the intimacy of that with the different camera angles and the different people talking. And they're in like these houses or these rooms. I'm like, that's what I want to do. The different camera angles is a big deal for me. I want to have different, like a close up on a face and somebody's reaction when someone makes it.
Yeah,
not just one camera. No offense, right? We all do this. The other thing is, I'm going to be honest with you. This thing we're all doing is so saturated now. As you know, you said it. Everybody's got a video cast. Everybody's got a podcast. Everybody's got their own thing. I want to do something a little different. What I mean by is that as a Bills podcast, a Bills video cast. I'm a Bills guy, but I wanted to do something where I can talk and expand to talk to other people. So this isn't just about, I'm going to have media people on. I'm going to have athletes on. I've actually already talked about people going to their house to talk. It's called Sal's House. So I'm going to go to their house to do something very cool. Like a player who has something
Sal's
cool
taking
going on.
over.
There you go, right? Yeah. So I'll be able to do that. But the other, I want to do something a little different because everybody's doing this. Right. I've always wanted to kind of stand out in some other way. And this was from my way to do it.
I love it. I really do. My attitude is this. I want to hear you talk all the time. I'm just listening to WJR when you talk Bills 24/7. So it's nice to have that. And Eric, you've been doing this now. You're over 200 episodes now. I remember when you launched it, Richie Incognito, episode number 1.
Right.
And now you're over 200 of these. And it's that same thing. They're conversations, not just football, a life, post-career, in your case, in a lot of athletes' cases. Kind of talk about, this is a rhetorical question and a dumb question, but I'm going to ask you anyway. You still enjoy doing this. It certainly seems, and I catch most of the episodes.
I do still enjoy doing them. And to me, what I've learned over those 200 episodes is irreplaceable. People ask me all the time what I make off the podcast, and we're not going to talk about that on here, but it wouldn't pay my mortgage. We'll say that.
Right.
But what I've learned from it, what I've put into a book, Tackle What's Next, to help others, and some of the feedback I've got from that has been completely invaluable. The people I've gotten to honor by bringing them on the podcast, showing them how I prepared for these podcasts, giving them something from a former teammate of theirs, some story that I looked up, and just makes them light up immediately. I mean, that kind of stuff has been so much fun to do. And for me to learn the other end of the microphone has been the biggest thing, honestly. It's, as a player, you're so used to a Q&A where you're answering the questions,
right,
and you're never leading the conversation. I go to dinner with so many athletes that can never lead a conversation, and I'm like, and I want to tell them, like, this is no judgment, but I get it because I was there too. You're so used to sitting down at every dinner conversation, every interview, anywhere you've ever been, and they say, who's the hardest guy you ever had to block? What's your favorite stadium play in? And you get the same questions over and over, and you're so used to answering those. And it's, hey, what's this week's opponent like? Give us something. To learn the other end of the microphone is completely different, for one, and two, that experience is invaluable to where now I can understand, okay, this is a conversational podcast. Here's how you bring up topics. Here's how you ask questions, and here's how you respond. This is now, okay, now I'm doing the pregame coaches interview, and no one wants to hear me talk. It's get in, get out, no response. And I started doing those coaches interviews, and I was still responding because, to me, I had never been coached on any of that. They just said interview Sean for the pregame. Well, I was like, oh, that's great, coach. Well, I just wasted 7 seconds of Sean McDermott 5 different times. So I wasted 35 seconds of a 5-minute interview doing, get into the next thing. Well, that's a different side of the mic that I didn't quite understand until I started doing the podcast.
Do you feel like doing interviews is also it gives you, or not even interviews, like conversations with other people, you learn from other people as well? Like, I've had great guests on here, and maybe whether it's their process or how they handle things, I feel like I'm constantly learning from other people that I'm speaking with.
All I want to do in life is learn from others. I literally want to pick people's brains, and I almost crave it now, mainly because of the podcast, but I want to know backstories, where you're from. When we walked up earlier, I said, you miss Florida, and I won't tell your answer on air because there's a lot of Buffalo. Yeah. But like, I want to know those things because I just came from Florida. I'm like, man, I could live there, and I know you moved from there. So like, I want to learn from others. I got some great advice early in life from someone that said, never step on a landmine that someone else already stepped on.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Learn from people that are further along, whether it's media, whether it's business, whatever it is. Learn from others, and you can kind of leapfrog them then.
I remember telling kids when I coach football, watch people who are better than you, what they do. Like, learn from them, right? So I try to take that advice. I try to watch and learn and listen to people who have been doing this a long time. And even if I have a different way of going about things, maybe I can pick something up that they do and say, that's really good. I try to be a self-corrector. I think I take like constructive criticism. Someone says, you say this word too much. I try to do that. I try to correct myself. I try to be better. But I will tell you that, like, as I go on, as I get older, I just turned 50 this year. I actually find myself more and more becoming more curious about things in life. Like, you know what I mean?
Too.
Like, I'm.
Me too.
I think when we're young, we think we know everything. Maybe I don't know what it is. And I've always been kind of someone who wants to learn, but I've even become more so. Like, I'm curious. Something happens. Let me look that up. Why is this happening? What is that about? What's that person? And I think it's really served me well to go forward. But I will tell you, the biggest thing is for me, I think because my profile has grown so much here in Buffalo and what I've been with my brand, I have become someone who's really gets more joy now out of connecting people. I connect people. And I say, somebody calls me, they want something, to look for something, they need something, or they're hoping to get something done. I say, I got somebody who can help you. And I introduce them to somebody who can help them.
It's like an ambassador.
I love doing that now.
So I heard this on my podcast. Connected people connect people.
That's right.
So you love connecting people, and people would probably look at Sal Capaccio and say, man, you're so connected.
Right.
You came to Imperial tonight, and I'm sure you got a good price on your meal. And whatever. Like that's I'm saying that because we're sitting here, but that's probably not the best example. But you've connected so many people that you've become a connected person.
Correct.
And that's kind of the beauty of all of this space that we're in, and that's advice for anybody out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I have a couple friends in town tonight.
Yeah, I met. They were cool people. Man.
Well, I got a couple other friends in town tonight I'm not going to see, but they're actually in town, and they were like, hey, we're looking to go out. So I called up a friend, and they're going to go to the rooftop of it. I got you
texted the owner of one of the best hotels in Buffalo.
And I said, I got a couple friends in, and they're like, absolutely. Like, that's just the way I operate. I get joy out of doing that. I love doing that.
You've been here for a while.
Right.
People have been knowing you for a while, so you got it like that now. I'm not going to keep you guys much longer, and I appreciate your time. Again, we're here late at Imperial on a late Saturday. you're fighting a voice. Eric's been traveling, been a long week for him. I do, without talking about again, because this episode is going to drop after they play. I don't want to talk about any football games. But last week in London, I mean, crazy injuries with Milano and Daquan Jones. God, he was playing at such an incredibly high level. Let me start with you, Eric, because you're a former player. How does a locker room, because, you know, fans got their takes on Twitter right after season's over, this and that. By the way, the Sabres are playing right now. That's why we're here.
Right.
Occasional screaming.
And the Islanders just scored.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah, but it's being looked at.
Deflection is high
being
sticking.
looked at for a high stick. I don't know if they're going to count it or not. It's going to be close.
All right, anyway.
Those
So
listening back are going to be like, no, it got called off.
Fans are going to have their instant takes. Sometimes the media does, content creators. As a player, when you had suffered those type of major injuries, I mean, incredible players, 3 of them now over the last 2 games. How does a locker room overcome that as players? Like, how do you rally around something like that? It has to be hard. And then I got to follow up for you.
This is a really complex answer. So you rally around the person and you do anything you can for them, their wife, their kids, because it's when you get injured, it affects the entire family. So from a locker room standpoint, you're doing everything you can for them. And this is very insensitive, but even in the moment that Matt Milano, your all-pro linebacker, I mean, just played incredible these last few years.
Yeah.
As quick as you can move on in it during the game, you do. And you just have to compartmentalize it. And it's so tough in the moment, but you just have to do it. And that sounds so insensitive, but if Matt Milano was going off the field in the cart, he would tell them to do that.
Sure.
And so you're trying to compartmentalize it. From a broadcast standpoint, we're sitting there like, oh my gosh, they were already shorthanded. Von Miller's on a pitch count. Now you got 2 of your best players on your defense out. You already have Trey out. Oh my gosh, these guys are going to get worn down. Bills keep going 3 and out. What the heck is going on? You kind of see it coming as a player. And this is me playing for Sean McDermott, but it's one play at a time. It's one series at a time. Like whether you're up 20 or down 20, the sideline and your adjustments are very similar. You're looking at what happened on the last series. You're talking about what's coming up on the next series. You're talking about the formations, what they showed you against those formations on previous drives. They're showing you pictures of it, and you go do it. There's very rarely a rah-rah speech. You know, we're all pros. We're all into it.
Yeah.
Especially with McDermott. If you're not into it, you're going to be gone. And Bean.
Yeah.
Like those guys have extreme accountability nowadays. And so these injuries are awful what they've dealt with on defense, but generally one side of the ball is going to get dinged up more than the other, and the other side has to carry the weight. In the last game against the Jaguars, the offense didn't, and they took the accountability for it. That's right. They gave up 25 points, but when you're out as many guys as they are, 25 points, especially since 7 of them were late, like that's not an insurmountable amount of points.
Sure.
And the offense took accountability for it after the game.
Sal, you know, when you cover a team and you're in the locker room all the time, you develop relationships to some extent with these players, some more, I'm sure, than others. When you see somebody like Trey White, what happened to him? And, you know, I see these injuries, and they make, like Milano, Daquan Jones, it makes me sick to think about it as a Bills fan. But something, I don't know what it was, but when Trey went down and it's just his emotion on the field, it was almost like heartbreaking. Like I literally had a little bit of water in my eye. I'm not going to lie about it, but then they kind of you're not a robot. They're not robots. You get to know these guys. It's heartbreaking for a beat reporter who covers the team.
It is.
See a guy like him, a person like him.
It is. But, you know, I'm going to tell you, the best example of this will actually be DeMar Hamlin for me.
Mm-hmm.
When DeMar was down and everything was going on, you knew and I knew what was happening. But in that moment, I have to do my job.
Yeah.
Right. And in that moment, I have to be the eyes and the ears for everybody listening. I have to be the conduit to actually what's happening on the field for everybody. So I have to remain and remind myself of that. At the same time, I know in my head, like, this sucks. I hate this, you know, and Trey White, I could see what was happening. I knew it was awful, but I have to remember I have a job to do to describe exactly what's happening. And then when it's all said and done, then you kind of let that part of it creep in and understand. And, you know, you wish you could, you know, you want to go up and, oh my God, the humanity side comes out. And it's not like, again, you're not trying to be a robot, but I have to remember, just like Eric did that night in Cincinnati, we have a job to do. and we have to tell everybody what's going on because that's our primary responsibility before anything.
Sure. And you're on the job in real time, but after the game or whatever,
Oh, man.
your heart breaks, doesn't it?
Of
I
course.
mean, fans are thinking about the team. Well, team's done, this and that. I'm
But
like,
some people don't.
Trey
Listen,
worked so hard to get back to where he was.
But some people don't. I will tell you, there are a lot of people in our industry who would say, like, that's just you. That's the job. You cover it. Guys get hurt, you move on, and whatever.
And we know what we're signing up for.
That's right.
But I'll tell you, I mean, that Miami game was so sweet to call. And my kids were at the game. They're in the booth after the game.
Yeah.
And I almost couldn't fully appreciate it. We talked about this just because I had been in Trey's shoes.
Yeah.
Like to where I rehabbed from an injury for what seemed like forever, and you get hurt again.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not the injury-prone guy. I never was.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you are. And it's a very, very tough feeling. And so I could put myself in his shoes. And it was hard for me to even enjoy the Miami game to the full because of the Trey White injury.
Same thing with Thanksgiving last year when Vaughn went down. And the year before that, Thanksgiving, I felt the same way. It's like after the game, even the questions of the players in the locker room were more about that than the win, right? Even the questions about losing their player. So, yes, to go back to what you said, though, I felt horrible. I still feel horrible. I feel really bad for Matt Milano. I've gotten to know Matt and his family really well over the last several years, and they're great people. And I just feel so awful for him and what he's going through. It's even before I feel for the Buffalo Bills.
And what Matt as a player has developed into is unbelievable. He was a pretty good player at Boston College with good measurables. His position coach is legitimately one of my best friends at Boston College, Ricky Brown. He's now at Navy. He was at the Commanders game with his son.
Okay.
Drove in for it.
Yeah.
And when Matt Milano got drafted by the Bills, he was like, you will absolutely love Matt. He will definitely start on special teams. Now, he wasn't saying he couldn't develop into it. He was like, no, he's an athlete.
He's saying
he's an athlete. He's
going to play right away.
But he was like, he will play immediately on special teams. Not all fifth rounders may even make – was he fifth or sixth? Fifth. So not all fifth rounders even make the team.
That's right.
And so he was saying like, no, he's going to play. So it wasn't a knock on him, but this is an all-pro, not a Pro Bowler. I was a Pro Bowler.
Yeah.
Matt was all-pro. I love when people always introduce me as an all-pro. I was like, I actually wasn't all-pro.
Just
thank you.
Only a Pro Bowler.
But there's a difference.
Sure.
There's a difference.
Last question here, two actually questions here for former Pro Bowler Eric Wood. Does it bother you, both of you actually, the national media perspective, like what's going on with Stefon Diggs right now on a national level? Like Josh explained why he was mad. And then you see somebody like Shannon Sharp, and these Michael Irvin a couple weeks ago. They're not plugged into this team. They don't know anything, basically. Stephen A. Smith as well. Doesn't it get under your skin, especially as a former player a little bit? I suppose it comes with the territory to some extent. But it's like everything this guy does. It's like the media, the national media, I should say, they want to get after him.
All right, here's the deal. And this isn't like some huge hot take. This is what it is. Buffalo is a small market team with big market exposure right now.
Mm-hmm.
And if you hate on the Bills right now and you pick at them, then you don't catch the grief as you do if you pick on a New York or a Dallas or an LA team.
Okay.
And so, in my opinion, it's very easy in the offseason to take shots at Josh or shots at Diggs. And because you're getting that attention and you're getting a ton of attention on social media without upsetting a big market, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not hurting your brand as much with ESPN, but you're going to catch a ton of ratings on social media. And I think a lot of people love talking about the Bills because Bills Mafia is so invested.
Yeah, triggered sometimes, right?
They're so
very triggered.
I'm triggered. Yeah. But I also never played with Stefon Diggs.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate when Josh gives clarity because I don't know the situation. I also never overstep boundaries to text Josh or text Brandon Beane and say, hey, what's going on? People kept this offseason. Everyone was asking me, man, Brandon Beane and Josh Allen stayed at your house. What's going on with Diggs? And I said, I have no idea. I never asked him. They're like, you never asked him in 3 days? I said, no. I would never do that because, and I said, honestly, it compromises my job a little bit because my wife will tell you I'm the worst liar ever. And so for me, if they're like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, oh, no. Like, they're like, you do know. So I would rather just never cross that boundary.
That's just respect.
We're friends.
You have respect for them. You don't want to do that.
Yeah. And you know what? If they brought it up, then I wouldn't bring it up, but they didn't. So I won't.
Right.
I would say, does it bother me? Sure. What bothers me more is the fact that I have to talk about it and respond to that stuff. Like, I don't want to do that. I want to cover football.
Right.
I don't want to talk about that stuff. And like, it's out there and we got to do it. And every single radio show we went on, how many we get asked about it. And I just hated being asked about it all the time, but I understand. And that's their job. But I'd just rather talk about the Buffalo Bills on the field and all that stuff.
And when the Bills were in the longest playoff in all of pro sports, longest playoff drought in all of pro sports, Doug Moran at one point said, Eric, if you break another helmet on the sideline, you cannot be our captain because you're an absolute hothead. I got in more fights with people in practice. I broke. So we used to have just the pictures and I would throw the books. Now they have the tablets.
Yes.
And I threw one of those and they're like, well, you're going to have to start paying for those. And so before there was Stefon Diggs, there was an Eric Wood. That's
amazing.
But no one cared about the Bills at the time. And I was the center and not one of the top 3 receivers in all of the NFL.
That's right.
And so it gets blown out of proportion because he's so dang good.
Right.
And the Bills are so good. I mean, the Bills offense since 2020 averages the most points in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could talk about how good the Chiefs have been. In primetime, Josh is the highest rated quarterback in NFL history. He was heading into the Jets game. It may have shifted now.
Sure.
But in primetime, he was the highest heading into the Jets game. I'm not sure what it is now. Was the highest rated quarterback in primetime in NFL history. And so when they show up under the lights and everyone's watching, the Bills are really good. And so they catch a ton of attention now. And people love digging at that small market Buffalo that we don't know if they're good. And they lost to the Bengals. And we could go down another rabbit hole that we're not going to go down.
Last question here, and I'm going to let you guys go. And not even a football question. I've come to know both you and like you just as human beings. And we're sitting at this table here at Imperial getting older. How much is parenthood changing? Because this is one thing that I'm kind of envious. You both have younger children. Matt Perino's another one. He's got 2 young kids. And my kids are like adults now. They're not even kids anymore. My son's going to be 21 in a couple months. My daughter's 25. And I get envious of I'm not even envious of like all your success in your careers, which is awesome. I'm more envious now than anything else. You got kids that are, they're just getting started with whatever it is they're going to do in life, sports, art, dance, whatever, music, whatever it may end up being. How much has like parenthood changed you think, over the last handful of years?
Let me go first on this, Pat. I respect you more than I even did beforehand because like when guys get married and they're like, oh, here comes the old ball and chain. I'm like, that's the worst thing you could possibly say. Marriage is the best thing ever. And when people are like, oh my gosh, kids, they'll dominate your life. They'll ruin your life. And I'm like, no, it just gets better and better.
That's
so
right.
I respect you more than I ever did. The fact that you prefaced the question like that you wish you were in our shoes. I don't know how it's changed because Josh Reed would be great to ask that question because he's got an older son and then 3 young kids. For me, parenting is the greatest thing ever. We have created a healthy boundary with screens. Now my kids are 5 and 8, so it's a lot easier than most. We've created a healthy boundary where our kids look forward to screens. So we just got back from Disney. Well, our kids on planes are great. They get their iPads. Well, they never get their iPad at home. If we go to a nice dinner and me and my wife want to turn it into a date night, you want your iPads? So we can do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
But we try to create a healthy relationship with screens, which I think is the biggest thing. And that'll be my oldest is my daughter. She's only 8.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, it's going to be social media, a cell phone, and all that. And we're going to have to conquer that hurdle. Max is
I'm there now.
12.
He's 9, turning 10, and I just got him a phone.
Max looks like he's 12 with that.
He has grown a lot, dude.
He has. We just got him a phone.
That
he's
was
in 5th grade.
I knew.
No, that's all right. But
but I just saw him and he looks 12.
And
he does look 12.
But he you know what he does? He has a phone. We got him one.
Yeah.
He texts us when he's on the bus, lets us know when he got to school. And like,
is it one of those phones that has the like guardrails in it or no? He's got a full-on iPhone?
No, it is a full-on iPhone, but we check it and everything and make sure. But here's what I do. I tell him, like, I don't do this, don't do that. I allow him to have the space to do the things. If something happens, hey, that's not what we do with it, because I want him to know that the more we can trust you, the more you can do to trust. I want him to understand that, like, he has the ability to do this stuff, because then he feels like, hey, as long as I'm doing it right, you know what I mean? If your parents say, I'm going to let you
have to deal with that.
If I'm going to let you stay out
not
late,
to the same extent.
Not to the same extent. No.
It's like when you were growing up and your parents said, you want to stay out later, just show me you can handle it.
Yeah.
You want a phone, show me you can handle it.
Right.
Show me you know how to use it. Things like that. Max is super into card collecting. Major into card collecting. I love it. We take him to Dave and Adams. We go places. I buy him cards. We rip together. I help him organize the cards. He learns. He reads the back of the cards and learns. So we're into this kind of stuff together. That's super cool. He obviously loves sports, but I mean, that's the kind of thing. Like I just want to show him that, like, all these things are awesome, and I don't want to restrict you from loving these things and having these things.
Sure.
It's all about trust and things like that.
I just, I don't know. My kids are my best friends, and I truly mean that. And
you're at the point now where you can be friends with them. If you're friends with them too soon, you won't be friends with them late. Someone told me that on the podcast. I tell you, I learned all this stuff in the podcast. Someone said, if you're friends with your kids too early, like friends, not teaching them, then you won't be friends with them later, because they'll go down in bad path.
I don't know if you still do, but we're at the age. I still wrestle with my son. He still wrestles with his kids, right?
He'll beat the shit out of me. You see my son,
exactly.
All right, guys, that's going.
I saw his highlight films knocking people's heads off as a linebacker.
That was a good time. And he's turning 21 in less than 2 months. I can't wait to be able to come to, like, say, Imperial and be able to sit down at the bar, have a bucket of Miller Lights with him. All right, guys, that's going to do it. Thank you very much for watching or for listening. Eric Woods, Sal Capaccio, I'm Patrick Moran. Thank you very much. Take care.